All right, I am not kidding you when I tell you that this is one of my favorite episodes of this show that I have ever recorded. I absolutely loved this conversation between me, Alex Greifeld, and Nasrin Jafari. You've heard Nasrin a couple times on the show before, talking about her apparel fashion business, Mixed by Nasrin. Alex Greifeld is somebody whose content I followed for a long time. And here's what I loved so much about the conversation you're about to hear. I've had a lot of these conversations now, right? And you can just tell when somebody has thought about the question before you've asked it. I don't mean that they have anticipated the question that you're asking. What I mean is you ask them a question and their answer to the question reflects that they have already thought about this same question at some point in the past in their work. And they have clear perspective that is rooted in some kind of mix of data and experience and all those things. And so then when they speak to it, you can feel it. You can tell they have real expertise. And this is the thing I'm talking about all the time when I talk about the idea of not testing everything, of having fundamentals that you can rely on. Alex reflects that so well in this conversation that you will love it, including if you are not an apparel or fashion brand operator. You should still listen to this episode because even though we talk specifically about Alex and her interest in fashion and apparel and how she sort of niched into that, and we talk about Nasrin's fashion apparel business, the things she talks about here are so much more broadly applicable, and the thought patterns are so much more broadly applicable that they will be useful to you, to your business, to your clients, whoever you are, etc. So strap in for a great episode. Before anything else, please do go listen to or go DTCFashionDecoded.com. Subscribe to Alex's newsletter. It is awesome. We'll talk about it later, but I want to get out in front of that right now. No more delays. Get ready for my episode with Alex Greifeld and Nasrin Jafari talking about how to build a successful, profitable fashion business, all the elements of that, and specifically how Nasrin ought to do that in her business. You are going to love this conversation. All right, Nasrin, hello. I'll start with you because you're a multiple-time veteran of this podcast, and so it's good to see you. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We're going to get to Alex in just a second, but to just give people the very quick overview for those who don't know. Look, there's 2 episodes linked in the show notes. You can get some context for Nasrin and her business there, including an opening the books episode where we opened the books. We looked closely at Nasrin's business a little over a year ago now, but Nasrin and I have worked together since then and talked about a bunch of different stuff. And so Nasrin, just give people an overview of what Mixed by Nasrin is, and then Alex will kick it to you in a second. But Nasrin, tell the people.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Nasrin. I'm the founder and designer of Mixed. We are a fashion brand that designs everyday statement wear that inspires people to live in full color. This is a bootstrap brand, so started it with no previous experience in e-commerce. I used to be a teacher, built the brand to first little over 100K, met Andrew, we scaled things together. Now we're going for around 3 to 5 million this year. So dealing with lots of uniquely fashion and apparel issues in the 3 to 5 million range. And that's what I'm really excited to talk to Alex about today.
In fact, working with you, Nasrin, has made me think a couple of things, has helped me develop a couple of opinions about e-commerce right now. Some of those are fashion specific, but one of them is that I think the $3 to $4 million range is maybe the very hardest stage of e-commerce. I think they're all hard in their own ways, but there's this challenge where the business is getting bigger. You don't really have the margin if you're growing with any speed to go add a whole bunch of help. And so OpEx costs loom really large, so you can't just go add all that help. And at the same time, it's getting bigger than what you can do for yourself. And it is a really tough stage of business. It's really, really tough. So whether you're an apparel or fashion brand or not, I think there will be things that are relatable to you in this episode. Okay, Alex, let's get me out of the way and talk to you a little bit. And I tell people a little bit about what your background is and all of that. And maybe you can speak to a little of you've been creating D2C strategy growth content for a while in a few different channels and worked with a lot of different brands, including I don't even know if you know this, but we've overlapped on some brands here and there. But you have more recently also niched a little bit more into this apparel and fashion space. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your total background, but then also what drew you to going towards apparel and fashion specifically?
So I've been in apparel and fashion a long, long time. I actually studied design and merchandising in undergrad, and I worked for 3 years as an actual fashion designer. I was designing mom jeans, and it was a much different time. I think I was a designer from like 2005 to 2008. So department stores were still kind of big. E-com was just a twinkle in everyone's eye. It was a completely different landscape. And I did that for about 3-4 years. And I realized I just cannot do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is not the career or the life that I want to have. So I pivoted into digital marketing and e-commerce, mostly working with fashion footwear apparel brands in my in my life as a full-time employee. I went solo in 2022. I've been consulting for a little bit more than 2 years at this point, working with a more broad range of industries and categories, but fashion and that whole space is, I'm just drawn to it. I appreciate beautiful things. That's the most shallow reason why I'm drawn to it. But I also appreciate it as kind of like a portal into human psychology. And the industry just really is different. Like the dynamics of growing a fashion business, especially on Meta and in some of these digital channels, like it really is different than trying to scale a supplement brand or like a cookware brand or anything else you can think of that's like really feature benefits focused.
Yeah. And that's definitely been one of the things that has been, I've actually been kind of kicking around the idea of like whether or not you can bring a more feature benefit focus to fashion advertising, at least in some categories. In Nasrin's case, Nasrin has jumpsuits specifically as has been like the core item. And there's an element of that almost feels a little bit more like that. Look, I'm not the jumpsuit customer, but just from like observing some of those things. But it is, I mean, to that point, it is a big question. I'm also going to just quickly say that, that I would say that the draw to beauty is not shallow at all. I think it's a very fundamental human thing. And I think it's one of the things I really like about working on, I've liked about working on Mixed by Nasrin is like these product releases are, you're trying to run a business and make money, of course, and all those things, but it is not lost on me that there's this element of expression and all of that. And when I get around real fashion people, it's one of the things I really like about it actually is like people care about adding value to the world via beauty. And I certainly know that's true, Nasrin, of you, that as you create these things, it matters, it matters to people and to people's everyday experience in these real ways. So, don't talk about yourself like that, Alex. It's a good reason to like it, Okay, let's actually use this feature benefit thing as a jumping off point. So if it's not feature benefit as the driver of advertising growth and those kinds of things, what is the driver of growth for a fashion business in e-commerce?
So I like to call it see it, like it, buy it. SILB. It doesn't sound great as an acronym, but it's especially if you're looking at female consumers or anyone who's into fashion, you're always kind of like passively consuming content or looking at different brands, even if you're not highly motivated or in market to buy something. So the path to purchase or the customer journey is literally, they see something and if they like it enough, they buy it. And it's almost like this virtual changing room kind of mentality where you feel pretty confident that you can return it. So it's like, you'll buy it, you try it on. If it doesn't work, oh, well, you return it. So the friction is lower. Like you'll see click-through rates for fashion ads are a lot higher than they are for other categories because it's not like something you're ingesting or putting on your face where if it doesn't work, it could really mess you up. So that's kind of like what the consumer mentality is in a lot of situations. Sometimes people are driven in market by specific scenarios, like they have to dress for an event or their body changed or they're moving or the seasons are changing. And those are things you can leverage as a brand to the extent that like you fit into those different moments. But when you're comparing fashion use case marketing to use case marketing for something like a supplement, there are just so many use cases that you can't make ads for all of them. Like it's not scalable. So it's more like presenting the product and answering questions about that the person might have about it.
Yeah. So so when you think about that, and you take that a step further back, this sounds fundamentally to me like a challenge mostly of merchandising and design. Like it becomes like you have to take the problem down to product, not just in a way of like making sure there's like efficacy, like a supplement or something like that, like you talked about, or skincare or whatever, but just like there becomes this challenge of that. And I know, like, Nasrin, I don't know if you want to chime in and think about like sort of how this has worked out in mixed, but like, we've definitely seen this, right? Product release moments are really big at the actual moment of drop, but then also beyond that, then those new products become the fuel to grow in the ad account moving forward, et cetera. And so, I don't know, maybe Alex, you want to speak to sort of how a fashion brand ought to be thinking about developing those products in the first place. And then maybe we could think about that specifically for mixed a little bit about as well. So how should brands be thinking about sort of what to make?
So there are two models. There's like a true fast fashion everything store, which if you think about like a Zara or a Temu or, a company like that, they just try to hit as many trends as possible. And they don't buy super deep into any one style. And you need a lot of scale, like you need a lot of capital investment to make that work. So it's not realistic for, a bootstrap brand to approach things that way. The other way to think about it is you are providing curation, like you're providing perspective and curation for people, for like a subsegment of the population who has certain tastes or interests. And so every brand, like you need core product. You need things that are, typically it's product that's on the more timeless side versus the more trendy side. It's something that people are going to pull out of their closet and wear like again and again. And it's something that has multiple seasons of staying power. So like for every footwear client I've worked with, they have one or two lasts, which is like the body of the shoe that they just run season after season after season, and people love them. For fashion brands, like for one brand I worked with, it was a certain style of top or like a certain fabric. It's something that like people will just buy, like they'll buy season after season, buy it in multiples, and for whatever reason, like people just like it. So there's a bit of an X factor there. And that's like those products are going to drive higher conversion rates. You're going to be able to do more of your ad creative iteration around those products because there's more of a reward, like more of an investment and payoff makes sense there. Core product is really like, it creates some consistency within your business when you're bootstrapped.
Every ad that I have made for Nasrin Jafari has been edited and produced in some way by my team that was hired through Behind the Scenes Studio. It's behindthescenes.studio. That is my team of creatives in the Philippines, subsidiary of More Staffing, my longtime sponsor on this show, that I've used to staff up my creative team, including all the ads that have worked for this brand. They are awesome. Behind the Scenes Studio is a contract-based way for you to scale up or down your video and graphic design production with incredible resources in the Philippines. I have on my team a graphic designer who was a designer at a major magazine in the Philippines, like a really deep resume, deep experience, really high quality work that's getting produced. Like you get incredible talent all the same ways that I always talk about with More Staffing, which is that you are not looking for the cheapest talent possible. What you are looking for is access to excellent talent at above market rates in the Philippines, but those rates are below market in the US. So if you are an agency side person, if you are an operator trying to scale up an internal team, go check out behindthescenes.studio to get access to incredible graphic designers, video editors in the Philippines. They are awesome. You will love it. Go check that out right now. Okay, so this is like directly overlays on stuff we've been talking about for mixed, right? Nasrin, I don't know if you want to speak to how that has sort of played out in your product development strategy and the issues you're facing there, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I think exactly what you're talking about, Alex. It's, we come out with a drop, and then what we try to look for is like, what are the winners that float to the top in a certain collection? And are those winners like, do they have lasting power to be part of our like core collection? So I think right now I would say we have like maybe 3 to 5 core pieces, some which are printed and some which are solid in denim, which I think makes sense given to, weekly wear, everyday kind of wear. Our fall drop. So a lot of like the conversation that we've had around this, around finding core and having more moments to drop product has caused me to design actually differently and more thoughtfully. So for fall, we have a lot more solid like core styles. We're coming out with our classic jumpsuit silhouettes in black. And I think like hopefully like we'll see if that has power to be like if that's something people really like and it can become part of our core, and then we use the other like the seasonal drops to have like to supplement the core. And so what I think about is like in every drop, there's a seasonal window, maybe anywhere between like 3 and 6 months, depending on like the garment and where someone lives. And I think about like how can we sell through the seasonal stuff in that seasonal window, and then kind of keep the core in place and keep buying into it season after season. I think one thing I'm not sure about yet because it's so early is like how much lasting power does a core item have? Like our denim jumpsuit, is that going to be core for 2 years or 3 years or more? Or the ruby jumpsuit, which is more highly printed, how timeless is that? And so it gives me a little bit of nerves as a designer because I'm kind of thinking like I need to come out with new product that can live in our core so we can kind of even out the volatility of how drop based fashion is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the jumpsuit, how many different bodies of jumpsuit do you have? Like, is it mostly the same, like essential fit, or are there different styles?
There's different styles. There are some that are more everyday and then a couple that are more occasional. But I think what I found with this brand is that the everyday just works better. It suits more people. It's more fit friendly. I would
Mhm.
say that there are about 6 different silhouettes. Some are like, tapered legs, some are wide legs, some are high neckline, some are, V neckline.
And what's like the one style fabric color combo that's consistently your top seller, and about what percent of revenues is coming from that style?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say like our ruby jumpsuit is it's definitely our best seller in terms of printed jumpsuit. It is a tapered leg. It's like a kind of utilitarian style jumpsuit. Percentage of revenue, I'd want to look into it, but I would say maybe 10. I know we've pulled these numbers early, like some months ago, but it's a
I'm
significant.
trying to see how fast I can get it in
Okay,
Shopify because I
so
knew
like
that was
pull it
coming.
up,
But
hold
yeah,
on.
keep going. Yeah, yeah,
Look it up, yeah,
yeah.
just pull it up.
I'm
And then
looking
I
it
would
up.
say also like our denim jumpsuit in the wide, it's a wide leg. It's a little bit more elevated every day. It's the denim, so you have that solid, more, it's not as loud as the ruby.
Mhm.
And I would say our denim with the tapered leg is also starting to kind of rise to the top as well, the denim boat neck as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
10 is about right. 10 is about right, 10%. And then the next few, which are variations like denim, pink nana, which is just a same exact silhouette, right, as ruby, but just like a different design. Probably the second most popular design there is another 8% or something like that. So like you put those kind of few together, ruby, denim, pink nana, and then the next one or two from there. It ends up being probably 25% of sales, something like that, over the last year, somewhere in there. Yeah.
And what I will say is for the printed jumpsuits, even I found that like the pattern is it's a black background and the actual print has maybe like 3 to 4 colors, but it's not super multicolor, which again, it makes sense. It's just like this really interesting
yeah.
IP. I feel like I'm learning as I'm doing more drops and gathering more
And
data.
if you're watching, listening to this, and you want to see those products, I will put a link to the collection. You'll see what those top products are because the collection is sorted by that. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think there are a few things you can think about. The prints are tricky because a print can have a decent amount of staying power. Like I've audited brands where they have the same prints that are bestseller, and it's been a bestseller for like 3 to 5 years, and they're multi-million dollar, like they've passed on past the 20-30 million dollar a year stage of growth just like on the back of prints. but there is more, it's like there's more inherent fashion risk to it if you're trying to build a core platform off of like, especially like specifically a single print. The denim is interesting. I think at this point it's kind of a matter of like, you know, that this certain silhouette of jumpsuit has the potential to be your core, like it's driving a ton of your sales. So figuring out what is it about this jumpsuit, like why do your customers love it so much versus everything else on the market, and then thinking a bit about how you can kind of ladder it versus every other jumpsuit, and then also just talk to it as like a solution. You know, it's easy to get dressed in a jumpsuit because it's like you just kind of put it on. So that's where you can start doing some kind of like product storytelling that veers more into the like more into the features, benefits, like narrative UGC kind of world, that can make, where you're producing a single ad and it might have more staying power than just like a try on video or a static of an individual style.
I actually have two questions in response to that, like regarding ads. So I've read your See It, Like It, Buy It email. And I think we definitely have ads like that where it's essentially just like somebody wearing the product and they're maybe like, you know, doing something cute or they're styled really cute. But the point is like you see it and you like it. And then we have something that I really developed with Andrew, which is like what we call our explainer videos, which is where I'm speaking to camera. I'm speaking as the designer and talking about here's the construction and here's the fit and here's the fabric. Do you think that those are two different styles of ads that speak to like two different kinds of customers? So that's my first question.
The logic of the explainer here is like, you know, if it's a top, you don't, it should be fairly clear. But like with the jumpsuit, there's like all of these things that it seems like customers really care about and have questions about, right? Like, you know, and Nasrin has developed the jumpsuit where it's like buttons on the outside, but it's not buttons, it's a zipper. And so you show like, okay, there's zipper or whatever, you know, when the buttons kind of pull back or whatever. And there's these fit questions, like she squats in it, and there's references to tall sizes and short sizes. My wife always references her very long torso and shorter legs, and so she can't wear a jumpsuit for that reason. You know, it's like very specific fit concerns that customers have, and so she like is trying to speak to these elements. And it seems to me that just like watching the customer behave with relation to the jumpsuit, there's this element of fit that like it almost is more like a feature and benefit in a lot of other products, because it's so specific to this product, this jumpsuit thing, in a way that is different. Maybe if you had a pair of jeans or something, like you would obviously show how they fit, but you wouldn't need to explain a lot. Maybe something about the fabric or something about the material, but that would take you less than 30 seconds, right? So so anyway, yeah, so those two different styles, right? More traditional, just like show it on a person and let it be cute, fun content around the city in New York, you know, or whatever, and just like show it, see it, like it, buy it. And then also like the explainer content are like these two different ways we've attacked it, and have seen, you know, interesting levels of success varying with both. But yeah, I don't know, Alex, reflect on that however you want.
Yeah, I think they speak to people who are in two different buyer journeys. Like the more straightforward try on video statics, that's going to appeal to someone who's kind of like lower friction, who sees the ad and just kind of really likes it, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to give this a shot. Like, and it's probably going to be someone who either has few qualms about returning something, or like they're an easy body type to fit. The other video is going to appeal to people like primarily who are looking for jumpsuits, but who have more objections. Like it's going to be more of an objection meter. And it's also going to appeal to people who maybe aren't looking for jumpsuits at the moment, but like they've always historically had issues, like fit issues and so they'll see you speaking to it specifically, and they'll be like, okay, I'm interested in this now. But what I'll say is, like, in terms of reaching different demographics with ads, I think mixing up your style, like almost like the art direction or the pacing of the ad, is like, that's more important than what you're saying necessarily, because I always say there's a late Gen X boomer. They like traditional infomercials. They'll listen to you talk for 3 minutes about the jumpsuit and like do a QVC kind of thing. There's millennials and young Gen X, and that's like the classic UGC, like get in and under a minute kind of thing. And then there's the younger generations where it should look like a TikTok and it should be like under 30 seconds if you can. And the pacing, like just quick cut, like every second. So like that kind of like stylistic variation that will get you age diversity in terms of like who's viewing the ads, if that's something you want.
This may nicely explain the increase in age that we've seen. I'm sure your mind went there too, but we've definitely seen some of our ads, like we've seen customers get older, and it might be those explainer. It's because those explainer ads performed well, and that's a super interesting way to think about that. Go ahead, Nasrin.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there are some people who think about reaching new audiences as from like a buying approach, and I think there's like what Alex is saying, the approach of like from the creative, actually diversity approach, which is what I think we've realized over the last couple months. Like Andrew said, our customer went older. I think that has to do with the explainer videos. The explainer videos also, I think, unlocked a totally new segment because we had our kind of see it like it, buy it style of certain products that kind of died out, it fatigued. And so I was like, did the product like lose its legs, you know? And then we came out with this kind of more explainer video that just unlocked a new segment, which has now like also then fatigued. So I'm thinking like, is there a new style or how do I recreate it? But I think another big issue is that I'm in the majority of the ads and I am, you know, I look one way, I have one body type, I have my certain style. And I think that one thing I've talked about with Andrew is like, I need to create some more room in my P&L where I can spend money to do just more content production where I can do, you know, work with influencers and creators to make content so that we can see it on different bodies, different styles. We've done very little of that, and we've put those pieces of ad like creative in the ad account. It hasn't done much, so I think I've always been a little bit discouraged because, you know, but I think the next big thing to test is like a large volume of diverse creative and see like how that affects who we're able to reach.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think in terms of how you're talking about the product, there's something behind the idea that like, this is the jumpsuit that looks good on everyone. And like, you can feature it on tall women and short women and women with different body types. Yeah. And then there's, if you know, you're bringing in an older audience, like just getting some creators who are, you know, in over 45, like that, people like to buy from people who look like them, even though that's, I don't, you know, you can agree with it or disagree with it from a philosophical standpoint, but it's really how it works out. The influencer thing, I mean, if you have more time than money, you can just go out and target like true micro influencers who are creating in the fashion space, and they'll probably do it in exchange for product. Like, and sometimes they'll even let you use the ads like without a licensing fee initially. Just like that can be a way to get some of that content for a low cost.
I'm convinced that people also love and are attracted to Nasrin and her story, and that especially at her stage of business, that many of the micro influencer types would do that specifically for her. Like that they would. If she said, "Hey, small business, like started it myself," mixed, like just if they got a sense of the brand, a lot of those people I think would root for her in a way where they'd be like, "Sure, thanks for sending me a jumpsuit. I understand you're not, you know, a billion-dollar fashion company sending me this product, you know, that can totally afford the $500 creator fee or whatever, you know." So yeah. I am doing all of the meta ads tracking for Nasrin Jafari's business with the Pixel that is installed from BILY. That's BILY.ai for 100% server-side tracking to get more and better data quality passed from Nasrin's website and from multiple of my other clients' websites back to Facebook ads dashboard. You can see very clearly that when you upgrade your pixel tracking, your event match quality scores all go up in Facebook ads. That is the clearest indication, the most objective indication that this works. You, by having a better quality pixel install, you pass better information back to the Facebook ads dashboard. That does two things for you. One thing it does is it makes your information more accurate in the dashboard, which is useful in and of itself. But secondly, it should also be giving Meta better information with which it can optimize your spend. So it's 100% server-side tracking, which means using Conversions API integration for you to be tracking all of your Facebook ads. Actually, BILY is beyond just a regular meta pixel. It actually is a one-stop shop replacement for Google Tag Manager. So you can also use it with like the click of a button to have your Google Ads conversion tracking set up, including enhanced conversions. GA4 with no developers. GA4 has been a nightmare for me to install with clients in the past, but literally one click with BILY, and it works perfectly. Also, all of the other channels that you might be advertising on, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, all those different things. Go to BILY.ai to get set up with BILY today for 100% server-side tracking, and it will only cost you $1 for the first month to test it. And so it is incredibly affordable, both in that first month and beyond. BILY.ai to get set up with BILY today.
When we talk about volume of creative, what number should I be thinking about? And should I be thinking about, like, I want to create X number of pieces a month, or give me some direction with volume.
So the way I think about it is, with each new collection, you want to do one shoot where you're just shooting everything and the product is really the only variable. Like the model's the same, the setting's the same, the pose is generally the same. And then you use that to try to figure out which of your styles have the potential to be your best sellers. Then you really focus on creative iteration within your core. Like you're going to be gifting your core the most. You're going to be commissioning different creator videos around your core. And then when you get a read on styles that seem to be selling better, like that's where you start to iterate more. And it's a little challenging because the timing with all of those different elements is kind of tough to figure out. You can use your judgment, like you can use data on past selling and just like general rules of thumb on what type of product performs well in meta ads to say like, okay, I think, these 5 styles are probably going to perform the best for me. So I'm going to shoot them from more angles. I'm going to do videos and photos. I'm going to do I'm going to shoot them in a couple of different settings and like go into the collection launch from that perspective. In terms of like how many assets, if you have a true bestseller, especially at the scale that you're at, like you could sell out a style with 1 or 2 ads of the bestseller. If they're, that doesn't mean that's all you should shoot, but it's like, as a rule of thumb, I like to be testing 5 to 10 new assets a week, like at a minimum, just because you're always looking for the next thing. You're always worried if something is going to lose momentum. If you're running cost caps there's a way that you can plan creative needs based on like how much revenue you want to generate during a specific period of time. So it really depends how you're running the account, but at least from what I've seen in the past, your best-selling styles are typically just going to perform the best. And so that's where you invest the most of your time, resources.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
This is definitely another thing that we had come to more recently, right? Where it's like, we did this summer drop, put in a bunch of time to create content across almost every piece that was in there, right? And then like a bunch of them just died on the vine right away, and they died on the vine barely spent in the case of, and in this case because of manual bids, right? And that was precisely the products that also like in every other possible way didn't perform, right? They didn't perform great over email or whatever, right? As well. And so like instead the mentality shifts to like invest more deeply, just like you would on the product ordering side, invest more deeply in the stuff that's more core and that you think has sort of bigger potential to drive larger value. Do that on the asset creation side as well, and on the ad production side, getting a little more focused and thinking about that with a little more strategy and some hypotheses around what those are going to be, as opposed to sort of just guess, because it does take time and money and stuff that is hard to come up with when, like I said, you're at this really hard stage of business that you're at right now.
Yeah. And actually,
go ahead.
Just, I want to ask a really specific, like account structure question. So before when I was running before I met Andrew. I was just doing ASC. It was maybe 1 or 2 campaigns, 5 ads or so in each. And now the campaign, like the meta structure is really different. We do bid caps, and there's a lot of content currently in the account. Like I would say maybe over 100 pieces active. A majority of those only get $1 or $2 of spend. I don't know. I have no point of view on this, but do you think that it is helpful, harmful? Does it make a difference to have a ton of pieces of creative like active versus like you're honing in on your top like 5 to maybe 10 ads?
I don't think there's any harm in it. How many unique styles do you have live on the site?
That's it. 66.
66.
66 unique products.
I would it's hard to say, like, if it was if the business was a little bit different, I would say do one campaign per product category, but I feel like because it's mostly jumpsuits, then maybe you're doing one campaign per body, like one for the wide leg jumpsuit, one for the tapered leg jumpsuit. And then as the assortment expands, you can consolidate that into category. But yeah, one campaign per style. And then I would have to see the specific types of assets that you're running, but I would say don't put more than like 6 to 8 ads in a single ad set.
Yeah, we're actually totally of the same mind there, Alex. The account is structured basically the exact way you just said. You just set it up, right? So like the 3 campaigns right now are jumpsuits, rompers, and dresses, because there is some other stuff besides that. Got a mix of lowest cost and highest value bidding. Highest value is one challenge in this category because you can't run highest value to shops, and shops has been some part of the sale on meta shops. And then we separate ad set by product a little bit more. So, or basically by AOV is really what it is. And so, and margin. So those are set that way. And then, no more than 6 ads per ad set. I think we do 5 to 7 as opposed to 6 to 8, but same, basically. So yeah, I think we're in the same mind there across the board. And there is this element of this where, especially if you're running lowest cost and you have products at different prices, you have to separate products at the AOV level. Otherwise, right, $50 conversion on a $100 AOV is really different than a $50 conversion on a $200 AOV. So, and you're optimizing for the lowest cost conversion. So, so that's the basic structure there. And I agree with your take too, that like you may have some times or some ads where like the entire account is spent on a few ads for a little while. You may have some times when it's a little bit broader of a mix, and we've certainly had both, where at times an ad takes off and kind of eats up the whole account, and at other times it's more of a spread across a bunch of different ads and a bunch of different products and all those things. Anything more that either of you wanted to say on the sort of ad buying side? I think that's definitely something that a lot of my listeners and folks are going to care about. But I also don't want to get go down the road if you don't have anything more to say about it. No? Cool. Yeah, I think the media buying structure is fairly straightforward here, and in my view fits with a lot of the other things that I say. I know, Alex, you have some thoughts about maybe not launching with manual bids in fashion, and well, I'm likely to disagree with you. That's okay. You're very smart, and I would love to hear why you think that a little bit, and what the thinking is there.
I think if you're starting from zero, you want to reduce as many variables as possible so that you're not spending 6 months and $500,000 like trying to hone in on your strategy. And the biggest variable for fashion is product. So I recommend that. I mean, actually, the structure that I recommend for a lot of brands is just run Dava against your existing site traffic and see which products perform best, and then use that. Like you can run Dava, get a read on like what your top 10 products, and then maybe test cost caps based on that.
Yeah, right.
Or I say like, okay, use that data and then create like 3 or 4 different ads per product and just put them all in a CBO and see what rises to the top. And if you do run that initial site traffic campaign and your ROAS and CPA are way off base from where you want them to be, then that's where you have to go back and look at things that are outside your ad account. Because a lot of what I encounter when I talk to fashion brands is they're setting a blended ROAS target across acquisition and retention, and it's something like a 4 or a 5x, and then
Right.
we have to go to 4x on our meta ads. So they have, it just puts you down this rabbit hole that prevents you from ever scaling. So that's why I recommend the cold traffic thing, because I think if you have things outside your meta account that are going to prevent you from winning, that's a good way to get line of sight into that before you start spending tons and tons of money on ads.
Yeah, so let me say a couple things there that I think maybe will help. So the first is DABA. If you don't know what that means, is dynamic ads for broad audiences. The idea is that you would take your products, separate them in your product catalog, and really in this case, it doesn't even have to be for broad audiences, right? Alex is saying partly just run it against any existing traffic you have as well. And the point is,
DPA.
what dynamic DPA ads. What that will partly do is because your ads are dynamic, and because there is this element in fashion where the product itself is the thing that's selling. See it like it, buy it, like Alex was saying earlier. It allows those ads to it allows certain products to rise to the top. Basically, it will sort of self-select by just seeing which products running your product images, basically, to do that. And I think that's that makes tons of sense, and I actually don't disagree with anything you said there. I think you're right. And from an early stage, and also just like from an early stage, there's just a lot of things to sort out, and so having one less thing to kind of worry about early on like that makes sense. There's sort of an element to the media buying that gets challenging over time if you are learning bid caps at the same time as also just trying to learn how to run your ads. So I think that start from zero advice is super good advice, and then use the dynamic ads to sort of bring your winners to the top. I actually don't want to go down this rabbit hole any further, and I'll tell you why. Because you have an awesome newsletter about this, so we're going to use this for a promotional moment for your newsletter. What you should do is you should go read, and I'm going to link to the specific newsletter where you break down exactly how to set up a fashion ad account for people. So if you're interested in this conversation, you got a little lost, you're like, or you just want to see more of what Alex has to say, whether you're more experienced or not, go to the link in the show notes, and I will link it. It'll say something about dynamic ads newsletter, media buying newsletter from Alex, as part of your very awesome DTC Fashion Decoded newsletter, where you are writing about fashion every week. And this will be a good entry point into it for people. It is. I read it every week. It is extremely helpful and extremely good, and exactly the kind of thing that I would expect from your thoughtfulness. So go, if you want more on that, go to the link in the show notes and go do that, and then subscribe and pay Alex the money that she deserves for writing her newsletter by being a subscriber.
I forwarded your newsletter to so many people.
A month, though, if you don't want to pay for a membership right away, I do send 2 free issues a month. So
yeah. But don't do that.
That specific email that you're talking about, Andrew, to so many people.
Yeah. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about product launch strategy and cycles a little bit. Because we've been talking about this product issue. It's so central to fashion. I have a question. And we can build this off of the way Nasrin has done this so far, which has been like one major drop at each season, basically, right? So let's talk about the frequency of product drop first. That's the way that Nasrin has done it so far. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? First of all, one major drop for each season. Secondly, if she should be launching more products more often, how often, etc. Alex, how do you think about that issue, product drops? And then actually from there, I want to go to another step, which is the actual mechanics, the tactics of the product drop. But we'll get there in a second. But first, let's do the question about sort of how often should Nasrin be trying to drop product?
So product drops have 2 roles. First, it's just putting more shots on goal. Like the more product you release, the more, if you're being thoughtful about your product development, it's like more opportunities to find bestsellers. And then it's just like an opportunity to talk about something. Like it's giving your audience a reason to listen to you in the sea of noise out there. So those are the benefits. I think the drawbacks are the more product drops you run, it just adds more complexity to the business in terms of inventory planning, and you don't want to be stuck with too much inventory. What I would focus on in this stage is figuring out if there's a way that you can put one of your two or three bestsellers into a replenishment position where you're able to. This works better if you have at least a year's worth of sales data, but you're able to say, on average, I'm selling X units a week of this, and it peaks in these seasons and it kind of fades out in these seasons. So I'm going to go into the next year trying to put myself in a position where I always have this in stock so that I'm never seeing the decline in performance that comes from stockouts. And so that will lay a really nice foundation of consistency to the business. You can do that to the extent that your core product is like a true timeless product. Like if you're looking at a multi-category business like the Gap or something, denim is on replenishment for them. And then like tops, t-shirts are on replenishment, but then a lot of the woven tops are just like seasonal drops, and they sell, they go through a markdown cycle and then they exit the business. So being able, like, replenishment just helps create stability. If you're thinking about adding additional drops, you have to think about how that's going to impact your workflow and like everything else on your plate resource wise. I think like at this stage, that's the first decision. Instead of trying to do more drops, I would try to improve your hit rate on the products that you're sending out in those 4 drops to start.
Did you have any questions? I thought you might have follow-up thoughts or questions, Nasrin. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to say something. Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. That's actually a little bit different than what me and Andrew have been talking about, because I think what me and Andrew have been talking about is like, let's in between the seasonal drops, let's have another drop where we take our best-selling silhouettes and we put a new print on them and have more shots on goal. Essentially, I think in that regard, it's simple in that we don't have to do any new sample development because it's really just a new print. So I think the lift there is easier. There is still the lift of like going to market and adding, putting everything onto Shopify and creating new ads and copy and there. So, but I think, what you're saying is that there is that trade-off, especially at this stage of business where it's like mainly me doing all these things. It's like, where is that time best spent? Is it in being thoughtful about the products that we drop 4 times a year, or is it about, hustling a little bit more, doing more drops, more shots on goal? So I'm really intrigued by your thought.
But at the same time, I think the logic of what Alex is saying actually fits the thing we're trying to do here, which is like increase the hit rate. Like that's really the goal, is like to try to do that. And I think we were just thinking about it slightly differently mechanically. But I think what you're saying is really right too, Nasrin, which is like the work involved with the drop and some of those things. Like I think Alex, your perspective here suggests you actually can maintain that into one moment a little more, so that it doesn't just eat up your whole life all the time. And at the same time, still go with that same goal. So what were you going to say, Alex?
I think running a proven style in prints is less risky than releasing new styles for sure. Yeah. If you sell out of something like right now, how long does it take to get back into stock?
It depends. If we have the fabric in stock, it'll take 3 to 4 weeks. If we don't have the fabric in stock, it will take 6 to 8 weeks. And so part of the strategy has been, making sure on our best sellers, we have the fabric in stock, so that at the very least, if we stock out, we're a little bit faster to replenish. But still, even, we had our birthday sale, like our annual sale a couple weeks ago, and all like sold it a lot, which was great. We had our first like 6-figure plus day, which was awesome. But, post that, it's just, we're stocked out on our best sellers and things have been super slow.
Yeah. Those capsule drops are most powerful when you can buy into them in a way that they'll mostly sell out within a short period of time. But like, again, I think what's challenging when the business is at this size is if you do plan to sell out, it might be a small enough quantity that you're wondering like, well, is this worth the effort? Like, the position you don't want to be in is you're at the end of the year and you have all of these jumpsuits that you couldn't sell, and then you have to figure out what you're going to do with them.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is like part of the reason why we run into a lot of stock out issues is because I'm just personally really afraid of just buying too much and being stuck with dead assets. So I've historically just bought less and moved things to pre-order, which is not ideal, but
yeah,
where the business is.
I mean, and unfortunately, like what I've seen is pre-order or selling out of at least 50% of your sizes will start to degrade your ad performance.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit. There's this question we've been wrestling with, which is like it's such a trade-off in fashion in some ways, right? Because by definition, you have to order a lot of SKUs because there are so many sizes of every product, right? So even for a product catalog that isn't that big, for Nasrin, I should mention 66 products earlier. It's not 66 SKUs, right? It's like 66 times 7 or 8 or whatever it is, right? And so ordering is a huge pain. And what you said is exactly right, Alex, which is like the thing you really don't want is to be stuck with product that you can't move. That's actually like the death knell for fashion brands. Like you just have your P&L looks fine, but you are out of cash because you just have these unmovable pieces of clothing that you cannot turn back into dollars. And maybe your P&L doesn't look fine too if you're sitting on that stuff. But that's such a challenge. And so one potential solution to that is pre-orders, right? Because pre-orders allow you to realize the cash up front, and then the customer gets their product later. And at times that looks really good. There's another challenge with that though, which is that if you send out a bunch of pre-ordered product all at once because you get your shipment in and you've got 6 or 8 weeks of orders, what you are now selling yourself up for is a roughly 15 to 45 day period where all of those pre-order returns come back at the same time. And if you have not planned cash very carefully, you just watch your cash drain because returns are part of fashion. And so it's a hard freaking cash management business. It is really, really hard. There are all these elements. I mean, there's all these, like, predicting those return rates sounds easy, but it's actually not. It's way harder because different returns. Anyway, the historical data is a mess. It's really, really, really hard. So anyway, you just mentioned it. Pre-orders hurt ad performance. I'm just curious if you have any more thoughts about that in this sort of conversation around ordering strategy and drop strategy. Maybe that's the whole thought. Pre-orders hurt ad performance. But any other thoughts about the issue of pre-orders specifically?
I mean, people only pre-order something if they really want it and if they can't find alternatives anywhere else. So it works really well. Like there are brands who, they get featured in like a shopping newsletter and people get obsessed with like one style they're selling and it sells out. And then like they can go on pre-order because it's like they can kind of continue to tap into that demand. It does introduce the cash flow issues that you mentioned. Like there are also brands that build their entire strategy around pre-order, where it's like we're releasing this edition of 2 different pieces, and the only way you can get it is to pre-order it. So it's something that you have to integrate into your business model very carefully. It's not like a magic wand that you can wave across inventory issues. It's kind of like a niche use case. The average, like a see it, like it, buy it person is not going to pre-order.
That's a good distinction. Go ahead, Nasrin.
It's interesting, like in certain times of the year where pre-orders just really rip, like particularly Q1 both of last year and this year, like just pre-orders didn't change conversion rate. Like people would just pre-order. And my thought is that like we kind of tapped out of that kind of warm audience or super fan like person who is willing to then pre-order. And then as you move to just like colder audiences that are not willing to wait, I wouldn't wait 6 to 8 weeks. I often don't pre-order anything. So, that's kind of, I wonder if there's like a warm audience and then a colder audience who then doesn't pre-order.
It could be something that you offer your email list, like a drop is coming, and you let them get first dibs on the inventory through pre-order.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, please.
It's funny. The 3-person podcast is all remote is always a funny thing because if we're all sitting together, it's like sort of easy. But you gotta constantly call out whose turn it is to talk doing it this way. But Nasrin, please say more. I love the questions that you're asking. So whatever you're gonna say, keep talking.
No, well, I was going to talk about returns because you brought it up, and I think returns are so unique to fashion in terms of like the percentage of returns. And one thing that
Nightmare. They're a nightmare.
I mean, I learned about e-com through e-commerce Twitter, which is primarily not fashion brands. So I wasn't thinking in like with enough of, it's also when you're early in fashion, your returns are like 5-10%, like because people, it just, that's how it is when it's not at scale. So I would love to talk about like returns at scale. And then how do we think about what do our COGS need to be if we understand that in fashion, return rate is whatever percentage. I'm happy to share mine. I'd love to know what your industry benchmarks. Yeah, let's just dive into returns.
So in categories that are hard to fit, like footwear, you're looking at an average return rate of like 27 to 30%. And there's not much you can do about that. I think if your return rates, you should always analyze return rates from a like dividing your return dollars by today's sales. Like I got this return on today and I'm dividing it as a percent of today's sales. And then you should also look at returns as a percent of the style selling, because you want to understand if you have styles that are just like, there's a quality issue or there's, a mismatch between how you're representing it and how people are receiving it. So if your return rate on individual styles is higher than like 30%, that's where I'd start. That's kind of a problem. Like any higher than 30%, and there's something going on, whether it's an issue with the product or like you're marketing it to the wrong people or something. But you do basically like the more tailored or the harder to fit the garment, the higher the rate will be. And there just isn't a ton that you can do about it, because people are just, they almost expect, they're just more willing to return it.
Yeah.
And I bet in jumpsuits, I mean, I thought this from the beginning, right? That jumpsuits are one of those fit specific products. Like people that has to fit just right. And I think what you're saying about the customer consideration, Alex, is actually something we haven't talked about very much, but that like they're actually going into the purchase with the mentality of like, I don't really care if I like this that much because I'll just return it. And so like essentially there's a selection bias to who buys it, especially in a category where, like shoes or something like that, like you said, where if the fit is really, really hard to get right, and I think jumpsuits is the same. I remember hearing about a swimsuit brand online where it was like 50%. And I don't think there was anything wrong with the product, actually. It's because like talk about something that has to fit just right. It's like if there was anything wrong, it was like it was going to get returned,
It's like that gets into stuff. It's like I never thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nasrin.
I was looking at like our return rates yesterday by product, and I think what you were mentioning about like how are you measuring returns versus your daily sales versus like per product versus maybe on a year time scale, where it's complicated. But we've had some styles where the returns have just been above 30%, and there was a clear fit issue. We could see it in the customer service inbox. Waistband was too tight, or the fabric is not stretchy enough, like that. And that is actually probably a conversation I should have with the factory. How can, like, is there anything, any way you can help me with this? But for the most part, the jumpsuits land anywhere between like 20 and 30% return rate. And then there are others, and like we talked about, jumpsuits are harder to fit. Dresses are closer to like 12 to 18%, which is better. And then tops, which we had phased out, but now are going to bring back in, historically have been, I would say, like in the 10 to 16% rate, a return rate. So right now the brand is about like 25% returns. And it just, it makes it tough when our COGS are 30%. Then you also have that 25% return, and like how then do you, so everything it's so thin. So how do we think about our marketing spend in terms of net revenue versus gross revenue? And then also, what do you think like your COGS should be, just in terms of fabric, cut and sew, like landed in
You
relation to your MSRP price given the return, right?
COGS shouldn't be higher than 25%, because especially if you're going to sell into wholesale, whatever price you sell it to the wholesaler at, they want to they want to triple it basically, so you're not going to have enough margin it needs to be like below 25%.
Okay, great. So that's like one really clear thing to fix.
When you say below 25%, I'm actually curious about this. How low outside, forget basics and stuff like that for a second. Like when you get into actual like sort of fashion in some way, right? It's more the kind of stuff Nasrin's selling. What numbers do you see across the board, Alex? Like how low can these numbers get to?
Well, if you're buying a credit card holder from Louis Vuitton, their cost of goods is probably less than 5% of the price.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's the more brand power you have, the more you can push that percentage down. The average
that's really about pushing the price up, though, right? That's not about as much as anything else, right? That's like,
yeah. If you're selling,
it's not that Louis Vuitton just negotiated a great rate with their manufacturer, right? It's like, I'm sure they did that too, but like, it's like, it's about the price. Yeah.
I mean, like Zara, because their model is quick turn, like quick inventory turns, they take a lot.
Sure.
COGS is a higher percent of MSRP, and that's their competitive advantage. Like they engineered their business that way. Most things you find in a department store are going to be like 15 to 25%. If you're selling to like a Walmart or something, it's going to be high. COGS will be a higher percent of MSRP because that's like a total volume game.
Yeah.
But that's one category I don't have a ton of experience into.
Yeah.
Like that real math.
That's really interesting. We're running out of time a little bit, and so I want to do two things left. One of them is a little bit on the mechanics of a product drop. So I'm just curious, Alex, high level, specific, like what are the things that when a fashion brand is launching a new product, and I bet this will apply beyond fashion brands, but when you're launching a new product, how do you do that great? How do you do a great job with that? What are the keys?
So it depends on what role the product's playing in your assortment. If it's something that you're trying to turn into tomorrow's bestseller, you do more like traditional marketing and storytelling around it. Like you seed it in the lead up to the launch. You try to get the word out however you want to. Like you give it to influencers, you run billboards, you do PR. If it's just a seasonal drop where you're releasing a collection, you message it through your own channels, you message it through your paid channels. And I mean, that's kind of it.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no, it's more of like a routine activity you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Nasrin's done some really cool stuff where she's invited people who like actually pay an entry fee and come to a big drop event at the studio in Brooklyn, which I think is a really cool thing. And unique to, I think, just again, there's people feel this real affinity to the brand and want to come, and it's a fun event. I got to go to one of them. Like it's just really different and cool and fun, and like, yeah, really it's a great thing to go do on an evening in Brooklyn. Like it's like if you're into fashion, you're into this brand, it's like really cool. And I think that does drive some cool local interest and some of those things, and I wonder sort of how big those could get at some point. I think there's some cool thing about it also, like this is launched in your studio, and that's a cool place to go, and there's all that stuff. But I also think it's unique. You're in Brooklyn, like this is like part of the brand is New York, and in a real way, like that's all over the place, and so yeah. Okay, then let's go to another place, because I think I want to hit one other thing, which again, this is broadly appealing to a lot of people. But what about sales strategy? Here's like a simple intro question that that we can jump off from there. Everybody debates all the time, right? Like if you run sales, you're going to devalue your brand. If you run sales, you're going to create a bunch of sale addict customers, and you're going to make it so that you can never sell anything full price again, all that stuff. But let's just talk really specifically about one element. I think everybody understands in fashion that it's totally fine to mark down slow moving products and try to turn it back into cash. that's I think really normal, except for the extreme super premium, Louis Vuitton you mentioned earlier, something like that, where they're just never going to discount anything. I don't really know, but I don't think so. Outside of that category, right? People understand there's some place for discounting at least your slow moving product. What about your best sellers? Is it a bad idea to ever mark those down? Use that as a jumping off point, Alex. Say whatever you want about sales strategies from apparel from there.
Okay. So the way that, honestly, it depends on your business model, because if you're running something closer to an outlet business model where promotions become kind of like a gamified marketing lever, then that's a whole, I won't talk about that now, but that's kind of like the exception to everything I'm about to share. You want to use promotions to incentivize people to do things you want them to do. You don't want to kind of give them promotions to do things they would have done anyway. So like, what are your highest value actions? It's getting a new customer to convert. It's getting a first time customer to make a second purchase, because that's like your biggest bottleneck to loyalty. That's where the biggest drop off happens. So that's where you should be. If you're running promotions, that's where you should focus. Whether you want to do so depends on, your brand, like how you're thinking about brand positioning. There's a lot of debate and back and forth about like, should I offer some kind of first purchase offer? It can definitely help with first purchase conversion rate, but it's something you have to test. And if you feel like it dilutes your brand, then just draw a line in the sand and don't do it. But like, you might have to be more creative elsewhere to make that work. In terms of like end of season sales, there are periods of the retail landscape is just so promotional that if Meta and Google are your big channels for growth, there are going to be periods of the year where it's hard to break through unless you're on sale. So that's one consideration. Again, if you want to keep that if you're drawing that line in the sand on full price, you just have to you have to go into that with your eyes open. And if you're selling in wholesale, they're probably going to mark your stuff down. So you'll probably have to mark your things down in DTC in response. It's possible to do it both ways. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be in the position where you're doing the majority of your customer acquisition when you're on sale. Because if you do that for 2 or 3 years, you just kind of like, you kill your ability to sell at full price. That's my data dump,
Yeah. It's a great answer. I think the clarity about sort of the purpose of the sale makes a ton of sense. We've approached this, and Nasrin's approached this so far as just like a couple of big moments per year, right? BFCM, obviously, you're going to run a sale. She's got this brand birthday sale. It's this really big moment. At the brand birthday sale, like she said, first 6-figure day ever, really crushed. I mean, beat our expectations by quite a bit. It's part of why some products sold out, I think, the way they did. And, it was a real mix of new and returning customer revenue. But I think if you just look at sort of like what revenue would have been driven in July otherwise, like it's plainly incremental, right? Like is very obviously massively incremental to what would have come through otherwise. And so that's been the approach so far, like just create a few big moments a year, and then besides that, have like a sort of collection on the side of slow moving stuff that's on sale that you're trying to get rid of. That sort of eliminate that gets you out of the like every 2 weeks we're launching another 20% off, we're launching whatever, and that's the death cycle of constant sales where you're only being able to acquire customers on sale. Now I've heard of brands doing that where they know they have to stop doing that, and yet once they've started, they're like, sure, we can stop doing that, but then my business dies because I run out of cash. And so it becomes a really, really difficult cycle to break. You have to really get good in a lot of other areas and claw your way out of it, right? But and I'm sympathetic to that. I understand acquiring customers on sale is better than the business dying. So like, if that's the trade-off, you should take the sale, but you have to figure out a way out of it eventually.
Your ROAS on paid is always going to be higher when you're on sale. So that's why you cannot use ROAS as your North Star metric for your digital advertising, because I've seen that happen to at least like 2 or 3 brands, right, where they just follow ROAS into becoming a fully promotionally driven business. business.
So with our 2 sales per year, one being birthday sale, there's a lot of messaging around like the origin story of the brand, which I think kind of makes the sale feel special. Like we'll have a lot of customers be like, happy birthday, which is nice. And then BFCM, which I think is like this wider cultural moment. Do you feel like that sounds like 2 sales that sound? Do you feel like there's room for more, or is that purely just like a decision that I should make based on how I want to build the brand?
I think it's a decision on, it's up to you. Like as you grow, you'll start to like feel the seasonality in the category. And it's something where if you, the thing that I always say about promotion is one of the things that gets you a higher valuation when you sell your business is the less promotion you do, your acquirer will pay for like the privilege and benefit of unlocking promotions as a growth lever. So like that's one way to think about it. I think there really is no rule of thumb. Like I think it's smart to run during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because it's just so hard to stick out during that period without it. Yeah, I can't give you a firm answer.
Yeah, no, that's
a great answer. Yeah.
Answer, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right, Alex, thank you so much for taking a little bit extra time going over today. Nasrin, same for you. It's just so clear how much you've thought about all of these questions before they've been asked to you. And so it really comes through. Really appreciate it. I mentioned the newsletter before. And okay, Nasrin, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to ask one more question if it's okay.
No, go for it.
Okay. Sorry, is that okay?
Yeah. I love it. Don't miss the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like this is broad. It applies to fashion broadly. So yeah. So I know a lot of people kind of roll their eyes, and I also roll my eyes when people talk about brand. Do you think that brand is meaningful in fashion, particularly if you want to build a 9-figure plus business? How much at this stage should brand be part of the discussion?
And what does it even mean?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Like, oh boy, well, you guys have 35 minutes, do you?
Yeah.
You should.
2-minute answer. We could do another one.
I'm willing to come back. I'll come back and do another episode for sure, because this has been so fun. If the listeners find it valuable, I will come back. But I
don't care. I found it valuable. I don't care if they find it valuable. I'm bringing you. Yeah, we'll schedule it. I'm going to DM you the moment this is done, and I'm going to say, here's my calendar. Find another one.
Okay, so my perspective on brand is that there's a lot of emotional baggage here, but basically the harder you want to go into brand, the harder it is to be bootstrapped, because the essence of brand building is taking an L today to take a financial reward tomorrow, which implies like breaking even or losing money today. Especially if you're trying to position yourself as a luxury brand. So for a bootstrap brand, I think your brand is your consistency in what you deliver, and it's kind of like your lens on fashion, like the use cases you're trying to meet and like how you're trying to meet them. So based on what we've talked about so far, your brand might be like allowing women to present themselves in a fashion forward, eye-catching way, but like remove the pain and like time suck out of it. And then like you can take that and slowly start to build on that, and it becomes like it influences the products that you release. It influences how you talk about things in your marketing. How it influences the visual presentation is something you'd have to think about, in a little bit more depth, but like that's how I would think about it initially.
That's super helpful.
While you were talking, I tweeted that was the single best answer I've ever heard to the question of how you handle brand versus performance. I really mean that. I think actually dropping it into the financial considerations and some of those things is so good. So that will nicely segue back into exactly what I was just saying, which is that you should be getting more of Alex's content because it's really good, really thoughtful, really well considered. You should do that with her newsletter, DTC Fashion Decoded. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Okay, great.
DTCfashiondecoded.com.
Yeah, great. Link is in the show notes, of course. Go get that content. Alex, where else should people find you and follow up with you and all those things?
Find me on Twitter at Hey It's Alex P as in Peter. And also I'm posting more on LinkedIn. I'm there under Alex Greifeld. You'll see the spelling in the show notes. And that's it. That's how to find me.
It's great. I'll have to ask you afterwards as a follow-up. Have you figured out how to make content that resonates on LinkedIn? You probably have. I have.
I have. Well, I've been doing it for a week and it's been working, so it's too soon to tell if it's staying power, but maybe.
All right, great. I feel like I'm just speaking into the void and I just don't even want to figure it out. So, yeah, great. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Nasrin. Thanks for taking the time as well and for giving people another very generous look into your business, which I really appreciate. I think you've been really helpful to people in a lot of ways. Let's go sell some jumpsuits. All right, if you couldn't tell, I was enthusiastic about this episode. I really loved it. I thought there were a bunch of things in this episode that were really, really good. And so definitely go follow up with Alex, get more information from her. Thanks to Nasrin, as I said there, for letting people into her business a little bit more. Don't forget to follow up with my sponsors. That's behindthescenes.studio, behind the scenes for creative production for your business, and BILY, BILY.ai. Both the links for those are in the show notes, as well as everything else we referenced in this show, including my previous episodes with Nasrin, who now has come on 3 times and really, truly opened the books to her business to let people into it, which I really appreciate so much. All kinds of great stuff coming down the pipe. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, and go follow up with everything I'm doing at ajfgrowth.com, including signing up for my newsletter there, which I am trying, as I've said a few times recently, to create with more regularity. But for now, sign up for get free e-commerce resources from me, and those will help you operate your business better. And at some point, when my newsletter comes out regularly, you will also get that. ajfgrowth.com for all of that. Email me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I will talk to you later.